Look closely at the ruins, at the bones of a dead world. Marble columns shattered and scattered like the ribs of a fallen giant. Streets that once echoed with triumph, now silent. Rome, the eternal city, an empire of blood, stone, and fire that ruled the known world. But what does it mean for something to fall? Is it a single event, a moment in time? Or is it a slow death, unnoticed by those who lived it? Rome did not fall in a day. It decayed, like a grand statue cracked from within, not with a scream, but a sigh. Not from an enemy's blade, but from the rot it refused to see. And as the West burned, the East watched, as emperors turned to tyrants and soldiers to thieves. The world's greatest empire became a shadow of its name. This is not just a story of war. It is a story of ego, of betrayal, of slow suicide on a scale the world had never seen. This is the fall of Rome, and how the world's most powerful empire destroyed itself. There once stood a city carved from ambition and blood, a city that called itself eternal. Rome, born from myth, two brothers raised by a she-wolf, locked in a struggle for destiny. Romulus would build the city, and from that single act of murder and foundation came an empire unlike any the world had seen. Rome was more than stone and senate. It was an idea that discipline, law, and conquest could tame a chaotic world. Through steel and strategy, Rome grew, swallowing rivals, breaking kings, bending gods to its will. Its legions were machines of order, formations so precise that even their enemies respected them. To face Rome in battle was to stare down history itself. But Rome didn't just conquer with swords, it conquered with roads, with wine, with language. By the time of Augustus, the first emperor, Rome stretched from the green hills of Britannia to the golden sands of Arabia, from the Atlantic Ocean to the edge of the Caucasus. It ruled over 50 million souls, nearly a fifth of the world's population. Its armies marched in perfect silence. Its laws bound strangers into citizens. Its roads ran like veins across the body of a continent. Merchants from Africa, philosophers from Greece, architects from Gaul. Rome was a magnet, pulling the brilliance and brutality of the known world into its orbit. It was a place where a slave could rise to senator, where emperors dined in palaces while gladiators bled for the crowd. And within the city itself, the heart of the empire, marble shone where once there was mud. The Colosseum roared with the blood of beasts and men. The Senate debated beneath statues of gods. Aqueducts carried water for miles, so a Roman could bathe in luxury, while the rest of the world drank from rivers. They built libraries, theatres, temples, sewer systems, cities within cities. To be Roman was to be civilized, and the Roman citizen believed, not hoped but believed, that their world would never fall, that they had tamed history itself. But beneath the glory, beneath the engineering, the banners, the marble, there was something else. An arrogance, a certainty that Rome would last forever. And that would be its greatest flaw. An empire does not fall when the last city burns. It falls when its people stop noticing the cracks. Beneath the splendor of the empire, something had shifted. Rome, once ruled by citizen senators, had become the playground of emperors, some wise, many mad. With each generation, power became more absolute. The Senate, once a roaring engine of debate, became a rubber stamp for tyranny. Corruption spread like a fever. Offices were bought, justice was sold, and the cost of conquest came due. Rome's armies, once made of proud citizens defending their homeland, were now filled with foreign mercenaries, loyal not to Rome, but to gold. Desperate to hold its endless borders, Rome stretched its legions thin. Enemies watched and waited. The frontiers groaned under the weight of ambition. Every inch of land gained meant another mile to defend. At home, the economy decayed. Coinage was devalued, bread prices soared, gold was hoarded, and the empire's own people, the very lifeblood of its greatness, began to suffer. The rich built marble villas, the poor starved in the shadows of temples. And yet, Rome did not see itself as sick. It saw itself as eternal. What makes an empire blind to its own rot? Is it pride, habit, the illusion that because something has always been, it always will be? The cracks were there, in the politics, the people, the coin, the sword, but no one listened. Or perhaps, no one wanted to. An empire built on discipline and duty was quietly trading both for comfort and control. And when the fire finally came, it found dry wood. Rome's walls were tall, its borders vast, its armies legendary, but even the strongest walls mean little when the enemy is already inside. By the 3rd century, the Roman Empire had become a house divided. Power shifted from one general to another, as emperors rose and fell like autumn leaves. In just 50 years, more than 20 emperors ruled Rome. Some lasted months, few died of natural causes. These were not times of peace, but of paranoia. Armies killed their own leaders, senators plotted, provinces rebelled. Rome was devouring itself, and while Rome fought Rome, its enemies watched and learned. To the north, the Germanic tribes gathered, the Goths, the Vandals, the Franks, once scattered, now united by opportunity. They were not mindless savages, they were survivors. Pushed by hunger, war, and a changing climate, they looked south, to the wealth of Rome. But many did not come with violence. They were invited to fill the ranks of Rome's exhausted legions. Emperors offered land and gold to foreign warriors. Whole tribes were settled inside the empire. Barbarians became soldiers. Outsiders were made Roman, at least on paper. But loyalty bought with coin is never as strong as loyalty born from roots. These new soldiers fought for Rome with one hand and stole from it with the other. In 376 AD, Rome welcomed the Visigoths across the Danube. They came seeking refuge, fleeing the savage advance of the Huns. What they found was exploitation. Roman officials starved them, taxed them, and humiliated them. And so the Visigoths rebelled. In 382 AD, Rome made peace, but it came with a price. The Goths would stay, not as citizens but as allies, a kingdom within the empire, a state within a state. Rome had survived the invasion, but lost control. Then came 410 AD. Alaric, king of the Visigoths, marched on Rome. He demanded recognition, justice, respect. He was denied, and so, for the first time in 8 centuries, the city of Rome was sacked. 3 days of chaos, flames, looting, broken statues, shattered illusions. Rome had always feared an enemy at the gates, but its real weakness was always within. Arrogance, corruption, betrayal. In trying to buy peace, it had sold its soul. The gates had opened, the cracks had become fractures, and the world's greatest empire was bleeding from within. But the worst was still to come. Rome had not fallen, not yet, but it had split. By the late 3rd century, the burden of empire had grown too heavy, too vast to rule, too complex to manage. So Emperor Diocletian made a decision. He divided it. One empire became two. The Western Roman Empire ruled from Ravenna and Milan, and the Eastern Roman Empire ruled from a rising city, Byzantium, later known as Constantinople, and today, Istanbul. The West inherited the heart of Rome, its cities, its traditions, its senate, but also its problems. A crumbling economy, endless invasions, and political decay. The East inherited trade, wealth, and a far more defensible position. It was surrounded by seas, not hostile tribes. It was as if Rome's soul went west, but its strength went east. In the West, emperors were puppets of generals. In the East, emperors ruled with purpose and bureaucracy. In the West, the currency collapsed. In the East, gold flowed through the markets of Constantinople. In the West, the church began to rise. In the East, the state remained supreme, but perhaps most important of all, the East understood one simple truth. You cannot preserve a decaying empire by clinging to the past. You must adapt. The Eastern Empire spoke Greek, not Latin. Its armies were smaller, but more disciplined. Its walls were thicker, its politics sharper. While the West tried to relive the glory of Caesar and Augustus, the East was quietly building something new. And so, when the barbarians came, the West cracked, but the East bent and held. The sack of Rome in 410 sent shockwaves across the world. But in Constantinople, life continued. Merchants traded, priests preached, bureaucrats ruled. It was as if two different worlds existed under the same name. They were both Rome, but only one of them was still alive. By the mid-5th century, the West was gasping for air. Its emperors were figureheads, its borders paper-thin. Meanwhile, the East stood strong, watching the chaos unfold, but offering little help. Was it betrayal or simple survival? Perhaps the Eastern Romans saw the writing on the wall and knew what the West refused to admit. Rome, as it once was already dead. All that remained was the final breath. Rome was not conquered in a day. It did not fall with a single sword. There was no dramatic finale, no last emperor making a final stand. The truth was slower, sadder, more human. Rome simply stopped being Rome. By the mid-400s, the Western Empire was a hollow shell. Its emperors were children, literal children, placed on the throne, then tossed aside. Used as pawns in games of power they barely understood. The generals ruled now. The Senate was a ghost. And the people? They looked to the church, not the state, for leadership. Outside the walls, the storm was closing in. Visigoths, Vandals, Hungarians. Each tribe, once dismissed as barbarians, now carved pieces out of the empire like vultures circling a dying beast. In 455, the Vandals sacked Rome. They came not to conquer, but to take gold, statues, women. They stripped the city of everything, even its dignity. The eternal city, violated, again. Meanwhile, across the Adriatic, the Eastern Empire watched. They had their own problems, their own wars, but still, they endured. They sent envoys. They made deals. But they would not die with the West. And then came 476 AD, the date history books call the fall of Rome. But what really happened? A warlord named Odoacer, leader of a Germanic army, marched into Ravenna, the imperial capital. He deposed a 16-year-old emperor, Romulus Augustulus, a boy named after Rome's founder and its first emperor. A cruel irony. Odoacer did not crown himself emperor. He didn't need to. He sent the imperial insignia, the purple robes and golden diadem, back to Constantinople. And he said simply, "There is no need for a Western emperor anymore." Just like that, 1,229 years of Roman rule ended. No final battle, no last stand, just a surrender to reality. The Western Roman Empire was gone. But what does that mean? Did the roads disappear overnight? Number did Latin vanish? Number did Roman law, architecture, and identity die? Not entirely. What fell was the system, the idea of one Rome, indivisible and eternal. What collapsed was the illusion of control. Peasants in Gaul still planted wheat, priests still read scripture in Latin, senators in name only still met in broken forums. But Rome, as a unifying power, as the beating heart of the known world, was no more. In its place rose kingdoms, bishops, feudal lords, 1,000 sparks, but no central flame. The world entered the Dark Ages, an age where men lived in the ruins of giants. And yet, even in ruin, Rome remained. In names, in dreams, in ambition, every king who wore a crown, every general who sought to unify Europe, every tyrant who claimed a divine right to rule. They all looked back to Rome. Rome is not dead, one monk wrote. It is merely sleeping. But in 476 AD, the dream ended. The greatest empire the world had ever seen, not conquered, but abandoned. The fall was not a murder. It was a slow, quiet suicide. The year is 476 AD, a date every history textbook will tell you. This is when Rome fell. But what did that really mean? Was it the collapse of civilization? Was it the day Rome burned to ashes? Or was it something more symbolic, something more profound? By 476, the Western Roman Empire wasn't dying. It was already dead, a ghost kept alive by habit, tradition, and fear of admitting the end. No armies marched under golden eagles. No glory shone on the marble streets, only shadows, only echoes. At the heart of this fading world sat a boy, Romulus Augustulus, a name meant to inspire greatness. Romulus, the mythical founder of Rome. Augustus, the first true emperor. Combined, a symbol of rebirth. But in truth, a cruel joke. Romulus was not a ruler. He was a puppet. Placed on the throne at just 14 years old, he ruled in name only, while his father, the general Orestes, pulled the strings. But even Orestes had no real power. Beyond Rome, the legions no longer marched. They were gone, disbanded, defeated, or foreign. Rome had outsourced its own defense to mercenaries, Germanic warriors paid in gold and promises. And when those promises were broken, they turned on their employers. One of them was Odoacer, a man of barbarian blood, but Roman ambition. When the soldiers demanded land as payment, Orestes refused. Odoacer responded with steel. He marched on Ravenna, the imperial capital, and crushed the last remnants of resistance. Orestes was captured and executed. His son, the boy Emperor Romulus, was spared, not out of mercy, but irrelevance. There was no grand trial, no public beheading, no last gasp of defiance. Odoacer simply deposed the emperor and declared that the West no longer needed one. He did not crown himself Caesar. He did not even pretend to take Rome's place. Instead, he sent the imperial regalia, the purple cloak, the scepter, the diadem, back to Constantinople, to the Eastern Emperor, Zeno. The message was chilling in its simplicity. There is no longer a Western emperor. Let the East rule, if it can. It was the first time in nearly 13 centuries that no Roman emperor ruled in the West. The title, once worn by Julius Caesar, Augustus, Marcus Aurelius, was now just dust. So why do we call this the fall? Because it was not just the collapse of an empire, it was the collapse of an identity. Rome had defined the West for over 1,000 years. Its roads, its laws, its legions, its idea of order, of power, of divine rule. When that idea crumbled, what followed was not just political chaos, it was a cultural void. The people didn't know what came next. They still used Roman coins, They still prayed in Latin. They still called themselves Romans, even if there was no Rome left to serve. But to historians and to the world, 476 became a convenient marker, a gravestone. Here lies the Western Roman Empire, born 27 BC, died 476 AD. In reality, though, it was just another page turning. The empire had been dying for a century. It was not a single collapse, but a slow disintegration, like a statue cracking from within until finally it shattered. And even in death, Rome refused to be buried. Odoacer and those who came after him styled themselves as kings of Italy, but always in Rome's shadow. Charlemagne, the Holy Roman emperors, the popes, all of them tried to revive the Roman flame, to wear the old robes, walk the old roads, and claim that divine legacy. But the Rome of Augustus was gone. Its senate was silent, its aqueducts crumbled, its eagles no longer flew. 476 AD was not a bang, but a whisper, a quiet surrender to history. And yet, it echoes still, in language, in law, in architecture, in the dreams of empires to come. Rome did not end in fire, it faded in fog. They say Rome fell, the books say it, the dates say it, the ruins certainly whisper it, but what if Rome never truly fell? Look around. The world we live in, its governments, its religions, its languages, its laws, they all bear the fingerprints of Rome. You speak words built from Latin. You vote in republics. You live under civil codes written in the image of Roman law. You walk in cities with straight roads, arches, forums, and domes, all gifts from a people long thought gone. Even the very idea of an empire with emperors, crowns, marble palaces, and godlike power is a Roman invention we never let go of. When the empire fell, its body may have collapsed, but its soul scattered into 1,000 seeds. The Catholic Church, a once marginal cult of fishermen and rebels, rose up in Rome's vacuum and claimed its divine right, not as a new institution, but as a spiritual continuation of the empire. The Bishop of Rome became the Pope, not a senator, not a general, but a shepherd cloaked in imperial memory. Centuries later, across the Alps, a Frankish king named Charlemagne was crowned Emperor of the Romans by the Pope himself. It was 800 AD, a full 324 years after the fall. And still, they clung to the idea that Rome must live. They called it the Holy Roman Empire. It lasted for 1,000 years, not truly Roman, not very holy, and barely an empire, but the name mattered. The myth mattered. Rome mattered. Even in the East, the so-called Byzantines never called themselves that. They were Romans until their last breath. And in 1453, when Constantinople finally fell, the final echo of Rome in the East was extinguished. But again, not entirely. The Russians claimed the legacy next. Moscow, they said, was the third Rome. 2 Romes have fallen, the third stands, and a fourth shall never be. They adopted the eagle, the double-headed Roman symbol, and draped themselves in imperial dreams. Across oceans, in a land Rome never knew, America built a republic on the bones of Roman ideals, senates, vetoes, civic duty, the architecture of Washington, D.C., Roman columns and domes. The founding fathers read Cicero. They admired Cato. They feared the fall because they studied it. Rome became more than a place. It became a template of greatness, of pride, of hubris, of collapse. Even the language of power still borrows from Rome. We say Caesar in many tongues, Kaiser in German, Tsar in Russian, Emperor in spirit if not in name. The shadow of the Roman eagle still flies, not in legions, but in flags, laws, and ambitions. So, did Rome fall, or did it evolve? Did it collapse, or did it transform? Maybe the empire of marble died, but the idea of Rome, the dream of civilization, order, empire, eternity, that lives on. Rome is in every capital that builds monuments to its own glory. Rome is in every leader who seeks immortality in stone. Rome is in every nation that thinks itself eternal. That may be its truest legacy, not a fall, but a haunting. Rome became a ghost, and it never stopped wandering. You can bury a city, you can break an army, you can even assassinate an emperor, but you cannot kill an idea. Rome never truly fell. It just became us. There is something strange about ruins. They speak, not with voices, but with silence. I once stood where emperors stood, among broken columns and sun-bleached stones. The birds had built their nests where once banners flew. The wind moved through archways once meant for triumphs, and all I could think was, they thought this would last forever. Rome did not fall in a day. It rotted slowly, like fruit left in the sun. Its glory faded, not with a bang, but with a shrug. The people forgot how to care. Then they forgot how to build. And then they forgot who they were. It is not just history. It is a mirror, and what it shows us is not always kind. Every empire believes it is different. Every generation thinks collapse is a myth. And every warning sounds like poetry, until the walls come crashing down. We are not so different from them, you and I. We walk among ruins every day. Some are stone, some are inside us. I tell these stories not to mourn the past, but to warn the present. If the mighty can fall, so can we. And now my voice grows tired, and this tale has reached its end. You've heard me speak of crumbling empires, of legions lost, of cities turned to dust. But allow me, just this once, to speak not as a narrator, but as a man. I do not know how much time I have. There are storms in me the doctors cannot stop. Some days I feel the weight of history inside my bones, as if I too am becoming a ruin. So, if this is our last meeting, if my voice never finds you again, know this: I am grateful that in the fading light of my little hour, you chose to spend your time with me. May you live fully, love fiercely, and learn always. Because in the end, we all leave behind ruins. Let yours tell a story worth remembering.